Let's welcome Lara Gularte.
Thank you all. This is a wonderful organization. I love it, all you people here. We need something like this in El Dorado County, I think. We have a big community there, but it's not organized like you are. And I understand it's been going on for 10 years? 10 years.
11 now.
11 years. Okay. So that's something to celebrate. That's great. And let me ask you this. How many poets are here that consider themselves poets? How many are writers? How many are both? Great, great. So I'm here to do kind of a mix here. Flash fiction and prose poetry. The subject I have is what is it? Which is which? What is it? And I don't know if I can answer that question. You will not maybe answer the question at the end of this workshop. You will probably have more questions. However, that's good, because what I do in my workshops, I do my workshops differently perhaps than others, in that if you have a kitchen cupboard, even if it's organized, I try to give you everything in the kitchen cupboard. And that's why I give the handouts. Seriously, I give you the handouts. Because the handouts, I believe every poet and writer should have a toolbox. And that can be in your toolbox. So when you want to reference something, you can always go there and find it. So I'm giving you a lot of information about both, and maybe overwhelming you, but that's okay. I want to. I want to scramble your minds. So let's just get started here. Everybody has a packet. And I'm going to go through the packets, not every single one in great depth, perhaps, but I'm going to start with the idea, this is not in the packet, as the prose poetry as rebellion. Has anybody heard that before? Anybody know who Charles Baudelaire is?
No.
The French poet, okay? Pretty famous French poet, Charles Baudelaire. He started this revolution. He started it because he wanted to free up poetry and not just have lines and meter and so forth. He wanted to just let it loose more. So he started the prose poetry movement. And so as it turns out, prose poetry actually resists definition. It's very difficult to really define what it is, and we'll go through that right now in terms of. I gave you the first handout if you could refer to it. And does everybody know writer's relief? Does everybody know that? You don't know writer's relief. Writer's relief, you check it out on the internet, okay? I used writer's relief years ago, and it's, if you have difficulty submitting your poetry to journals and magazines, and you don't have a secretary to do it for you, that's what writer's relief serves as. Not only that, they often, by the nature of what you write, suggest certain magazines that would fit your particular poetry.
Wow.
And I found them quite helpful for me starting out. So I used them. They cost a little bit. I don't know how much they cost now. It was some years ago that I used them, but you can check that out. It's called Writer's Relief, and it really got me going. And so I had my poetry published in magazines, nationwide reputable magazines that I probably would not have thought to send to, but they did, and they got published. So that was very nice. And they can help with where your work's going to go that's going to resonate, because that's important. Sometimes you write a certain way and the magazine just doesn't fit what you're sending them. So I'm just giving you that as a tip. Anyway, this article from Writer's Relief is it flash fiction or prose? And what they say here is flash fiction includes microfiction, and they call Twiterature when there was a Twitter, I guess. That was not a Twitter, I guess they have to change the name. Then there's many fiction and other very short fiction, and then the word count ranges from 50 words to 1,000. That's a big range. And the usual qualities of storytelling, character, plot, tension, emotional arcs, dialogue, simply considered into a shorter length. What is prose poetry, according to Writer's Relief? It's not written in verse lines, but in traditional sentences, prose. However, a prose poem will still feature poetic symbols, metaphors, figures of speech, heightened imagery, and emotional effects. Maybe some, maybe none. But that this goes into having to pin out what the definition of prose poetry really is. So, let me see what else on this too. And then in the back, if you turn it over, and then this is a good way to look at it too. There's two circles that overlap. Picture two circles that overlap, and in the center is where flash fiction and prose poetry share common traits. Maybe if you're a visual person, you can look at it from that point of view. And this is just, you can check this out later, and it's yours to keep. We go to the next one. Next handout is prose poetry and short flash fiction. And again, I'm going to go down to the bottom where the characteristics, because it's, pinpoints the characteristics of each. Prose, written in paragraphs, tells a story rather than describes an image or metaphor. Generally, not always, generally has characters and a plot. Poetry, definition, written in verse, written in poetic meter, focuses on image-driven metaphors, might have a narrative, but it might not, or it might be harder to understand. Prose poetry looks like prose, written in paragraphs, focuses on image. So that's what I want you to take in your minds with that quick description on that, if you can see the differences. Then I have this wonderful article by, I don't know if you know who Trish Hopkinson is. Trish Hopkinson is somebody that's a pretty reputable writer and poet, and she gives a lot of tips. Does anybody know who she is? You can find her online, and you can get on her email list, and she'll send all kinds of tips for writing. I think it's even more so than just poetry as well. And so you can read this in depth in total later on, but I'm going to just highlight a couple of things here that they say. And then also we're going to read a prose poem as an example. So what they say, she says, what is the example? This is from her guest blog post by Jessica Terson. What exactly is the difference between prose poems and flash fictions? To be honest, I'm guilty of submitting the same piece of writing as both. Okay? Think Remember that. And she's being honest, she submits the same piece for both. For the most part, the call for submissions determines how I submit the piece. If a magazine calls for flash, I'll submit it as flash. If a magazine calls it for a prose poem, I'll submit my piece as a prose poem. So, okay? So lighten up. So, and I'm going to skip to the next page, and you don't have to go with me, but they talk about, in the end, there may be no definitive answer to what differentiates prose poetry from flash fiction. And I'm saying this over and over again because I just don't want you to think that I said it and nobody else did. So, writers as well as editors, unfortunately, will have to rely on their best instincts. And when submitting flash fiction or prose poems, it's best to read the magazines or journals first to find out what kinds of work they do publish. If the examples of flash fiction feel like poetry, it's probably okay to submit more of a hybrid piece. If the prose poems read like regular prose, you can rely on less conventional poetic techniques. And then just to also say that since Baudelaire and Rimbaud began abandoning rhyme in the 19th centuries, critics have contested hotly the definition of poetry. With the popularization of flash fiction, it's now possible to argue about the definition of prose. And at the end, I love this sentence. Boy, hey, life is complicated. No wonder literature is too. So for me, the bottom line is be original. Use your mind, jumble up your mind. Whatever is in your mind, put it on paper as a draft and see what comes out. This is a good technique. One of the techniques I do in my workshops, especially at the prison, and some of my people in my workshops at the prison are actually, they're published, is because there's all levels. People are of all levels in their writing. And to me, and for me personally as well, each person starts out on a journey for themselves. You are solo on your journey. Everyone has their own voice, and that's the beauty of it. When I have participants in my workshops, some of them have never written a poem in their life, have never written in their life. And of course, they have much to catch up on. But yet they do, because they get on their path. And what they're trying to achieve is finding their own voice. And once they find their voice, then they start writing and listening to other poets and writers. And it takes time, but it is a journey. And it's beautiful to hear participants at the workshops, and because you can just see it, and I'm sure here when you have a group, that every single person has a very unique voice in what they write. And that's what makes it wonderful to me, in reading, writing, and poetry and everything. But you yourself are on your own journey, so it's not really competing with others. It's up to you. And so that's why I like to put out there so much from the kitchen cupboard for you to think about and just, go with what brings you joy. What brings you joy, and develop your own style and get stronger. So I'm going to read. Well, you have a prose poem. I think I'll skip the prose poem. It's called Bath here, and it's by Amy Lowell. and selected poems. I wanted to make sure that you had a piece of a poem that was a prose poem, and it's considered a prose poem for you to go back later and check it out. But I'm going to go over to my own poems that I will actually read both of them. The Old Woman's Last Days, if you could find that one, it's the next handout. The Old Woman's Last Days. And there's another one in the back. And I will read this. This, I'm going to tell you right now. I sent this out, submitted it to magazines as a flash fiction. And they published it as prose fiction, prose poetry. So I thought it was flash fiction. What do I know? I didn't argue with him. It was nice to be published. So there you go. And that's why I'm sharing these two poems of my own, because both of these poems I submitted as flash fiction. I thought I was writing flash fiction. And I went, cut this out. I want to write flash fiction. But I can't get away from that poetry. I mean, it's like it's funny. So let me just read this one poem and see what you think. The Old Woman's Last Days. The people stop on the rocky hilltop, look out at the world, watch it wane. The land drained of color, of life, the hills gray. Below them, the rust-stained valley, the smell of spilled oil lingers in the air. The brown, snaking river, the only thing to follow. The old woman leads their way, walking days of weary distances toward mountains. They don't hear the footsteps behind them or see human faces forming from the granite rock. Scattered by the fright of sudden movement, a flock of birds fly off. The people make camp, build a fire. The old woman gathers fistfuls of twigs, throws her arms into the fossil moon. She stamps the ground and makes small cracks appear. Her long white hair floats as she turns and spins, blurring the world around her. She needs to believe in a place beyond her mind. What her heart finds when she closes her eyes. Inside her skull, oceans, continents, forests, and plains. Men in camouflage hunt the people down. They say the old woman is a deer. They eat her.
Oh my goodness. Huh.
This next one is a little happier. But if you see what I mean in terms of it's not exactly prose. There's some music in it, and when you're writing, and I think you do prose and flash fiction as well, it's always good to read the piece back to yourself to hear your own music that you're making. And if it's not kind of clunky or something, you can always change some words. That's a pretty good technique.
One thing I noticed is that you read very well. You just your pronunciation of the words and the tone and the rate of speed, and the pitch really grabs you.
Thank you. Because I work at it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So this next one is like a little different spin, but again, it's one that I sent out and as a flash fiction and got published, but as a prose poem. The Blue Cape. The woman believes in magic and miracles and that what she loses will be given back. When she cleans out her closet, she finds her blue cape missing for years. She wraps herself in its dark wool, feels her shoulders shift fragile as a bird's wings. So many memories in the fabric with its frayed collar, torn lining. She empties the dark pockets of coins and Kleenex. There's a story behind the missing button. When the woman steps outside, the cape slips from her shoulders and flies off down the street. It flaps for hours in the wind, then hangs itself on a hook at an all-night pancake house. Yearns for someone to take it home and send it to the cleaners. No more living at the bottom of a closet under heavy shoes. For 3 days the cape holds on, only to have a janitor stuff it into a rag bag. On top of the heap, the cloak waits for a window to be opened, then lifts itself up and out. The woman wakes one morning with the lint of dreams sticking to her night clothes. She sees her old cape hanging on the door and knows she gets a second chance. From her bed, she lifts her hand in the air, waves hello to her new life. So that's another one, and here is one. I think I'm gonna. You have two poems on the next one, two prose poems on the next one. Bona fide prose poems because they're from the Poetry Foundation, and that's how we know. And you can at your leisure you can read both, but I think we want to read the one called "Don't Bother the Earth Spirit" by Joy Harjo, who's our former poet laureate of the United States, as many of you may know. So this is a prose poem as well. Don't bother the earth spirit who lives here. She is working on a story. It is the oldest story in the world. It is delicate, changing. If she sees you watching, she will invite you in for coffee, give you warm bread, and you will be obligated to stay and listen. But this is no ordinary story. You will have to endure earthquakes, lightning, the deaths of all those you love, the most blinding beauty. It's a story so compelling you may never want to leave. This is how she traps you. See that stone figure over there? That is the only one who ever escaped.
I just have a question. Do you have to stick with these particular ones? Did you stick with a certain number of words? Or did you just submit any numbers that they gave you in between?
For the ones I submitted?
Yeah, like these, did you have to stick?
You mean Joy Harjo's or my own?
Your own. Don't bother the earth spirit.
No, you know what? I don't even like to do that. I sat down with a piece of paper and wanted to write a piece of flash fiction. So that's what I was thinking when I sat down to do it. And I think, writers need to write from where they are in their own heads and where they're coming from. Their imagination, because everybody's unique, like I said, with their voice, and what their imagination is. I'm a fan of surrealism, if you must know. And I really enjoy the surreal poets. Baudelaire is one of them, and Lorca is one of them, and so forth. So that said, going into the flash fiction component of my presentation here, I'm going to share with you the next handout you have, which says, what is flash fiction? And I'm going to share, we're going to read a little bit of this because many of you are writers and trying to make the leap perhaps into poetry or vice versa, I'm not sure. But there's many as you know, many names for flash fictions: microfiction, sudden fiction, short, postcard fiction. And according to this, the word counts anywhere from 140 characters to over 1,000, capping out sometimes at 1,500. And so it names some famous flash fiction, and I'm a great fan of reading other writers to also make your own writing strong. And it lists some people here that you may already know, such as Langston Hughes, and how many know Raymond Carver? Yeah, Raymond Carver is, if you don't know him, check him. He's an amazing short story writer. Writes about domestic landscapes, fighting with his wife or whatever, life in the kitchen and so forth. But he goes very deep, and he's quite famous. And David Foster, Wallace, Jamaica Kincaid, Margaret Atwood. Now you know who Margaret Atwood is. And Margaret Atwood is, Margaret Atwood, before I even discovered her novels, I discovered her poetry. She's an amazing poet. I have all her poetry books. Yeah. So I'm happy for that. And of course, she's a wonderful prose writer as well, as many of you may know. So, flash fiction. What makes a successful short story? And according to this, because everybody has their opinion, remember that, you got to find your own opinion here. For a story to be complete, we only need one small element within the narrative to be resolved. This element can be tiny, often unhappy. It might leave us with millions of questions, but it answers one. What is resolved within a story is not only something that happens externally, but internally. Often writers are told their protagonists must change somehow from the beginning of the story to the end. I'm sure you've all heard that one. And usually people take this to mean that something must happen. But this isn't necessarily true. An emotion can change. The way one sees something can change. A mood can change. A character might simply decide to make themselves tea. Okay? And it says many students are relieved to tell them not to focus on plot, but aim for one small moment. I like that myself, quite frankly. But sometimes, I don't know about you, if you have an outline or something when you write, but I just like to see what comes out of my brain. And then I'll go see what I wrote, and I go, that's weird. And then maybe I'll tailor it from there. That's how I write, pretty much. And one of the things, and you can read this in depth, like I said, because I put on here stories does anybody know who Lydia Davis is? Somebody must know Lydia Davis. Oh, you have to know her. Lydia Davis, in fact, I brought her. She is pretty famous. She won, what did she won a bunch of, she's pretty, if you look on their internet, you can't resist. If you put short story, you're going to see Lydia Davis. She's won the Man Award. What is that big award? She's won a lot of awards. Her unique brand of short stories began to take shape after she read the American prose poet Russell Edson. And you poets, look up Russell Edson. He's a scream. I was going to bring some of his poems, but yeah, I can't bring everything in the kitchen cupboard. But Russell Edson is crazy. He writes these crazy things that work, and they're prose poems. And he is considered the grandfather of surreal prose poetry in the United States. Okay? He started it in this country because Baudelaire is in France. And this is who she was. inspired by when she wrote her short stories. So they go hand in hand. If you want to look him up in some of his poems, their poems are a crack up. We just did that at my writing workshop at the prison, and we got all kinds of crazy things written by participants on it. Chickens flying in the air, and all kinds of strange things. Anyway, until then, until she discovered Edson, she had been trying to write more traditionally structured short stories and had been unsuccessful. And so she credits Edson on inspiring her. And so this is what I mean. It's like she's a world famous flash fiction poet now. And these are all her little stories. She has longer ones, but I gave you a sheet of paper with many of her little stories, and you can look her up for more. She found freedom in this for herself. It opened her up as a writer in terms of she was trying to confine herself to what you're supposed to do, and she broke from that. And when she broke from that, she became famous. Okay? Now, we're going to read a couple of things she wrote. You're going to think she's pretty strange. But you got to work with her for a little while. What it just says here. And her stories are very brief, just one line, very brief. Oh, I know, she was named a Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters by the French government for her fiction and translation in 1999, and she won the MacArthur Foundation Fellowship and won the American Academy of Arts and Letters Award of Merit Medal and Man Booker International Prize. So she's got some prizes that she's done. And let's look, because you have the handout now, under what is flash fiction. Let's read one of her stories, and there's other stories in the back. You will have to read them several times to figure out what they're saying sometimes, or find out what is meant by it, because she really, well, you'll see. Let's try this one first. At the bottom of the page in your handout, what is flash fiction? This is a short flash fiction by Lydia Davis. It's one of her famous ones, believe it or not, used as an example a lot. Fear. Nearly every morning, a certain woman in our community comes running out of her house with her face white and her overcoat flapping wildly. She cries out, "Emergency! Emergency!" And one of us runs to her and holds her until her fears are calmed. We know she is making it up. Nothing has really happened to her. But we understand, because there is hardly one of us who has not been moved at some time to do just what she has done. And every time, it has taken all our strength, and even the strength of our friends and families, to quiet us. Okay? That's the story. This is what they say it's about, interpretation. Davis has chosen a fiction-worthy moment. She chose a moment. The woman coming out of her house screaming, "Emergency, emergency," every day. She has acknowledged the truth of this moment and the relatability. Surely there are many moments each of us feels that we cannot bear, whatever the drain of our life may be. She points this out and shows us something we already know, but in a new way. The idea that the neighbors are helping this woman, but they feel empathetic. Simple as that. And so small. So I'm going to leave that with you, and these other stories, and if you turn the page over, the mice are a crack up. I mean, the mice are definitely, I hope you all have clean kitchens, but but every one of them, I mean, this is how she writes. You can get whole books of her work, and look her up on the internet, don't go by me. You probably wouldn't write like her. You probably wouldn't want to write like her, but she gets your mind going. So I want you to find your own voice, not copy. Like none of us do. We find our own voice. So the last thing I want to introduce you to is Hiromi Kawakami. And you have a story, and this is another surreal. I can't help myself. I like surrealism, all right? She has just been introduced to me by someone I didn't even know about her. I love her. And she's a prize-winning, she's a prize-winning writer of short fiction. And I have her book called, what's it called? People from My Neighborhood. People from My Neighborhood. And I love it because she has actual people that from her own neighborhood in Japan. She's from Japan. She has prestigious awards in Japan. And some of these stories, poems and stories, I'm looking at flash fiction now because, of course, Grandma, which is the story that I gave you, is no prose poetry. It's a little longer, and I meant to do that because I wanted to share some flash fiction like Lydia Davis and then show a longer piece, which is the same. And I must tell you that Grandma is the most traditional story in the whole anthology that she wrote of her neighborhood. The other ones are pretty crazy and they're fun. They're lots of fun. So I'm just going to read a little bit from that, but she basically has a litany of odd characters in the neighborhood where she grew up with. And she has like somebody that she named Grandpa Shadows, another called Uncle Red Shoes. So she's getting aspects of the neighbor and she's building on it and she's making it more interesting, is a good word perhaps to say. Let me see. The idea of community is in the heart of this series anyway. And she uses events she remembers, she uses the people in her neighborhood and how everything is somewhat interconnected. Some of it's pretty bizarre, but you have to, again, read it a few times. You laughed, did you read? You're reading Grandma? Grandma's, that is the most pedestrian one of them all. So, yeah, and I love it because, when you read it, you'll see, but Grandma, it's like she's very old and she goes to the hospital, so the reader thinks that she's not going to come back and she's passed on. Oh no, she does not. She does not. And at the end, she's out there doing her own thing, as usual. So, there's different spins on it, and you will see it. And I highly recommend that you get a copy of People from My Neighborhood. It's translated into English by Ted Goosen. And they're kind of like dreamlike, if you can think, dreamlike stories, capturing a universality in human experience, but you have to kind of go, is that really human experience? So they're fun stories. And so I've given you a whole landscape and probably been more on the surreal aspect, because I like surrealism and quirky stories. Does anybody have any questions on what I've just spoken on? In relation to their own right? Go ahead.
Can you redefine for me what surrealism?
That's a good question. Surrealism, it's like, I know it when I see it. It's like,
It's not really happening.
it's happening but not happening.
Yeah,
It's a different reality. Like
It's happening, but
the
it's
man
not happening.
who ate his hat so that he could not go on a trip.
Huh?
I mean, and you caught me there. So you look up surrealism, and I can tell you who the writers are. And Shelley, can you say anything about surrealism? Good. Makes me feel better.
No, just, you had a writer with 100 Years of Solitude.
Yes, Marquez.
Yeah,
Gabriel Marquez.
Yeah.
100 Years of Solitude. That's magical realism. And that it's a good point too. Magical realism is in that whole surrealism thing that I am talking about. I love the magical realism. The story that Gabriel Marquez has about somebody, a lame goose suddenly flying in the air and playing havoc on all the inhabitants of a town. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. Playful, crazy kinds of things. Go ahead.
Surrealism, bizarre, a surreal mix of fact and fantasy.
Fact
Fact
and
and
fantasy.
fantasy.
Fact and fantasy. Thank you so much.
Think Oxford Dictionary.
Thank you so much. Because this is my whole point. Everybody's mind is different. And you have your own surreal minds that are yours. And I want to have you do that, make it come out in your writing, just to loosen what you're writing. You don't have to be a surrealist writer, I'm not saying that. But, you know, I do different exercises sometimes with workshops where I have people that, for instance, if you're right-handed, I want everybody to write with their left hand for 5 minutes and see what comes out. No, I mean, it really breaks open the regularity of what people grew up with and what their writing is, and it kind of, you know, breaks through something in your brain to see the world in a different way. So,
I would like to add that this young lady next to me, a guest of mine today, had me do that in a workshop with her, and it made me so angry, I don't know how to tell it.
well, the fact that you're sitting next to her makes me feel good.
And I've known her for years and years, but I was just mad that she wanted me to do that.
And you know what? That's okay too, because you can do what you want. You know, if I'm in a writing group and somebody tells me a theme to write on and I don't want to write on it, I'm not going to write on it. No, I mean, you know, it's what you want to do. So, but I mean, good word. But no, I'm not saying you have to do that or you have to do any of it. I'm just saying to look at reality and the things and whatever you're writing on from different perspectives. Open up your mind a little and see it from a different point of view. And then go back and change it, or not. I mean, you know. But have fun, playing around. You know, writing can be too much serious business, and you gotta do it this way. So I'm just saying, before you go there, once in a while, maybe you could have a play group. Yeah, have a play group. And it nonsensical stuff, you know, write a bunch of nonsensical stuff. And then if you read it a few times, you go, God, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
The first thing that popped into my head when Carol asked about what is surrealism is Hieronymus Bosch, Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso.
Yeah, Picasso.
So that was my first association with that term, and so for me, it's a visual thing.
It's
Yeah,
a
me too.
visual thing. Now you can all look up surrealism and writing and poetry. There's a lot out there. And Lorca, somebody must have read Lorca.
Yeah.
Lorca. Okay, he's a good one. William Blake is somebody that is really good, but beyond even surrealism, he really can inform your work.
Visionary.
Visionary, yeah, visionary.
Are you familiar with Clark Ashton Smith?
Clark Ashton Smith? No. Is he?
Who said yes?
Who is he here?
You have a group.
No, he was a dark, a poet of dark writing along the lines of Edgar Allan Poe,
Oh,
and he was a local poet.
Clark Ashton Smith?
Yes.
I'll look him up. Edgar Allan Poe, he was in that genre, kind of?
Yes, he was a dark poet, dark short story writer.
I'll look him up. But, you know, surrealism isn't all dark. It can be playful.
He was all dark.
Okay, no, you know, too dark, you know, you have to be dark all, I mean, it's okay to write dark, I'm not saying, but it's, you know, having a little mix there is nice too. But I will look him up. Anybody else? Any other questions about prose poetry versus flash fiction? Is everybody not confused about it now? Does everybody know what it is?
Yeah. Okay, so a prose poem could be written like, not like a regular poem with a line breaks and stanzas?
Absolutely.
oh.
Paragraphs. And there's some examples that I gave you. Yes.
I get a feeling, when, like even in your examples, between reading a story and prose.
Right.
And even some of the flash fictions, they were, for me, the way I experienced them more, and I'm just exploring this, you know, I'm no authority, but they were more prosy. I think that for me, fiction is writing. It's more left brain, it's more logical, it's more grammatical, it's more validatable, whereas poetry is, you know, is kind of strict, but it's okay because it works. It's got, I mean, you're breaking boundaries of the left brain, but in poetry itself, you know, there's rhythm and there's pace and rhyme and things. So prose being more wordy than maybe poems, but also more flowery and metaphorical and vivid, maybe than a story. I don't know. So I see them kind of on this continuum. And, you know, it's kind of like how something hits your palate for me.
I don't agree with you.
Okay.
I don't agree with you because you know, some amazing short story writers that write very linear. I call it linear and non-linear. And you can, for a flash fiction, you can do a lot of the same things as prose poetry. Because prose poetry is not lines and meter and such. It was freedom to not have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that, in my opinion, what I like about prose poetry is I am an imagistic poet. I write with images.
Mm-hmm.
If you get my books, you'll see lots of images. And prose poetry, I can put those images in there and not worry about, the story has to make some sense, but it's more of an imagistic writing. And so is the flash fiction and the prose poetry. That's what glues me to both forms.
And I write prosy too, very prosy,
Right,
actually.
right.
That's why an editor, they'll start going, too long of a sentence. I'm like, no, there's flow, you know what I mean? So I'm with you there, but it's kind of like wine, you know, you go around it's a table and everybody tasting it. And I think when I said hits your palate, it's how it hits its palate. Some of these hit my palate differently, beautiful, all of them, and very experiential and wonderful, but it's funny how we always have to have a line, you know, that
Yeah.
defines, and I see them as flowing from one to the other, kind of almost like a matter of degree. Because
Okay.
I definitely am very vivid in my writing, as I feel like I am.
Okay.
But I'm not so limited that poems, a true poem, is challenging to be so wordless and say more, you know, so it's just a flow.
Well, there's
appreciate it
so
all.
much else too, because then you get into the different kinds, the forms of poetry. The different forms, there's a lot of forms, pantoums, villanelles, sonnets, haiku, and then there's free verse. So sonnets are okay, and some of the forms, but for me, prefer free verse because I feel so much freer. And prose poetry really speaks to me from that position. And I do like to write imagistic words in my poetry. It works for me, both prose poetry and for flash fiction, and that's for me. And yeah, I've written some pieces with dialogue, which it's a different way to do it, different brain, and that's fine too, as long as I put some episodes in the story that's outlandish or something, it works.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Laura, well, you've inspired me to sit down and write, but what I was going to say was you're talking about surrealism, and it seems to me that utilizing a writing exercise like they have writing down the bones, where you just write,
Yeah.
write, would be a really good source, especially when you're talking about surrealism and so forth. I think that you could probably stumble onto some really good stuff by doing that. Have you
Yeah.
tried that?
I didn't need to.
Randy?
That's where I come from. Is for me, that's how I've always written from the get-go. And the story of my getting my programs and my MFA, etc. To be quite honest with you, as far as when I was a published poet when I began my MFA program, and I took fiction. I didn't take poetry. Yeah, I did. And whatever works, right? I took one because the couple other professors were rather stodgy and they were into this form. And I did find one professor who inspired me, and the reason why he inspired me was he would get so excited about a particular poet and have us read it, and he would jump up and down in front of the classroom.
Cool.
And it was so exciting. So that's, that kind of language to find in poetry or flash fiction is what I always look for.
Huh.
And it's not in a box. Writing the bones, yes, it can really help, definitely. I was beyond that by the time I discovered that.
I didn't quite hear what Randy called that. Was it
Yeah.
writing the bones
No,
exercise?
writing down the bones.
Writing down the bones.
Writing down the
Yeah,
bones.
we can put that down. And who was it that wrote that?
Wrote a couple, I can't remember.
Natalie Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it's a good one. It's very good. Writing down the bones, Natalie Goldberg.
Natalie Gold.
I found that in reading Gertrude Stein, a lot of what you're talking about is pulled out almost as if it were from Baudelaire coming into English, and then because it's non-linear.
Yeah, you're right. Good. So, one of the big things when you're a writer, for me anyway, I have to do less of it so I can do more writing personally. But discovering a new poet or writer that excites me. And I have to tell you that Kawakami, the short story writer, that's what she did for me in the last couple of months when I discovered her and I got her collection. I love it when there's something new that I can learn from, or something new that I really enjoy that excites me in writing. So get excited and read things that excite you. I don't care what they are. And don't go by me. Because the things I read may not excite you. Some other ones would. Anybody else? That's it? Okay, so what I want you to do is not write with your left hand or right hand. Take a deep breath and write something. I do not want perfection. I do not want a finished story or poem. I want a draft, a rough draft, or just something, words that don't come together yet, the beginning perhaps of something, whatever. Try it yourself and see what comes out right now. So I'm going to give you about, what time is it? Oh, how about 11:30? Is that okay? Well, yeah, close to 11:30. I'll tell you when we got 1 minute left. I'll look and see how many people are done and go by that.
Okay, before who would like, anybody would like to share? How many people would like to share? I think you said you wanted to share. Somebody over here. Okay, just a second here. I just want to make one more point here concerning, I have to go back to
I think your mic is off.
Oh, that would help.
I want to go back to saying something about Hiromi Kawakami, the people from my neighborhood, that group of short stories, in terms of, I like the fact that she connected all her stories in a neighborhood, and I'm doing that right now in a workshop with people, and basically I'm just going to read this little bit from it. She offers a series of impressions, fragments of lives that are just slightly off kilter from the everyday. And many of us have lived in different kinds of neighborhoods, some in close-knit neighborhoods where everyone knows each other's business. We'll recognize some of the people, and it basically, the pleasure people get from this collection of what they say is the feeling of recognizing something familiar that isn't quite right. Something that could be real, such as her story, Chicken Hell. You'd have to buy the book to read that story. Anyway, I'm just I get excited like this over a newly discovered writer I find.
Cool.
Forgive me. Okay, let's see what we have.
Short story, is that okay?
Yes, stand please and speak loudly, or you can come and do the mic.
I haven't signed it. I found it. Thank you.
Okay. My conundrum. Sleeping all night has always been a challenge for me, but with all that is going on in the world today, and my singular drive to write political, social commentary on those subjects, frankly keeps me up writing about it all into the wee hours of the mornings. I guess I'm afraid to quit at this point in time, afraid that if I don't quit, I will somehow be part of the problem. I'm definitely not writing this to encourage any kind of response of help from the listener, however. I already know all the answers, solutions to my sleeplessness. My guilt feelings if I quit, and above all, my fears for our future. Alas, the reality, I'm only one person, a lone voice in the wild waste wilderness of ignorance, bearing in mind that the word, and the root word of the word ignorant is ignore, something that I just cannot bring myself to do.
Nice. And see how she kind of stressed that one word. It kind of made the story for me anyway. And you don't forget that when you do some repetition is good to use in different ways in which you're writing. I like that.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mine's not really a story, but it's
Yeah, the cinematographer when she's saying.
these people. Okay, hang on. It's like the gas station goes. Mine's just writing. It's not really formed into a story. Lemon yellow is how she described the jacket. It's me, it's really me, and I saw it there, hanging on the blonde-haired mannequin in the window at the Galore Depot. You know, the thrift shop at the plaza. They have half-off sale on Saturdays, and the place is always packed. I wanted to stop in and ask the lady with the purple hair. She's not a punk rocker, but she must have messed up coloring her own hair. You can't miss her. Anyway, as I was saying, I wanted to have her hold the jacket for me behind the counter. I've seen other items there with little notes pinned onto the hangers with names, dates, and times, etc. It could have worked so well if I could have been notified before the yellow jacket disappeared out the door with someone else. Sorry. I get nervous. I always wonder, and it makes me feel better, whether the fact that I didn't go back for the jacket, whether the original owner would have recognized it had I worn it on the street. This is the problem with buying clothes at the thrift shop. Surely the lemon yellow would stand out on the street or the grocery store. It's not out on the street, or it's not a color you see people wear, really. I mean, the color you see people wear, sorry. It's not bright, but it's bright, but not as bright as the yellow vests the workers wear when they're busting up the street with jackhammers or smoothing out the gravel. This yellow was more like taking a fresh breath of sunshine as one is walking through an orchard. Yes, maybe it's a lemon orchard in the first days of spring. I'll take a look in the window again next time I'm downtown. Maybe they bought it as a gift and now it's returned. I know, deep down inside I won't find it there, but I can always close my eyes when I'm falling asleep and dream of that perfect sweet shade of yellow.
You spun that out really good, fast. But, you know, what I like about it is you take one thing there and you make the story out of the jacket. And who cannot, I can relate to that. I mean, who went to the thrift shop and saw something that they should have bought and they came back and it was gone and quandaried over it. I wonder who had it before and blah, blah. So I'm a thrift shopper. And that I like that. And the color lemon in there stands out. Thank you. Next.
She wasn't handed off.
Really, I just want your feedback.
That's why we do it.
This is called Twin, can you hear? It's weird.
Get it out
Okay,
there.
twin life, a vignette. Nana, Nana, we want to show you something. The twins tumbled toward me, jumping into my arms for long hugs. Pressing their small warm bodies to my heart, I remember their previous surprise, a headless bird held softly in bewildered hands. Thoroughly hugged, they dance with excitement, each rushing to be first to say, "We can make you invisible." They wave their hands and chant the magic words. Small faces alight with mischief turn to each other in excitement. "Nana, where did Nana go? She's disappeared."
That was a turnaround, that was good. Feedback is a keeper. Next.
Yeah, all right, I'll watch out for corners. Thank you.
Good.
I want more. Doggone, what's the matter with me? In life I have plenty, but I want more. More. But more of what? I have everything. I just think I don't. Why is that? Why do I continually think I don't have enough? And again, enough of what? What don't I have enough of? I do have enough of everything. So what is my problem? Why can't I just be satisfied with having enough of everything that I already have? What keeps driving this need for more and more when I don't even know what I need more of? What is it? Fear for future survival?
Okay. And I'm sure a few people could relate to that. I can. Very nice, thank you.
I don't admit it.
Come on up. Wow. Hey, you're cooking here from that cupboard. It's on the stove.
Hello, everybody. I would consider this a short paragraph prose poem. He held his paintbrush in hand, yellow, reds, yellows, and browns on his mind. It was a day to stay in. There was just a little wind, not much more than a gentle breeze. Still the tree leaves shivered, all of them gripped by a sense of release. Fall is on its way.
Thank you, and that was a definite visual there. Yeah, that's a very, very good image, nice images.
Thank you.
Let's come up here. Okay.
You have to come up here.
I will hobble. I went skiing just with one foot. It's not finished, but do you have a voice? The question came from a homeless man sitting in front of a nearby Starbucks sipping a pumpkin spice latte. Musician. To me, his head turned to me, his eyes, two round glazed donuts, demanded an answer. No. I mean, I don't think so. It's been a while since I've heard it. Maybe it's escaped, found someplace, somewhere safe. Well, I have quite a collection, and you are, I'm sorry. Well, I have quite a collection, and you are, that I've picked up here and there. You're welcome to take one if you would like. Turning his tattered backpack upside down, excuse me, he spilled voices across the sidewalk.
Oh, very nice. Can you repeat that last line, please?
Turning his tattered backpack upside down, excuse me, I'm getting hoarse. He spilled voices across the sidewalk.
Nice. Very good line. I love it. Can I steal it?
Of course. Next.
I have 3 sentences. You want me to get
Yeah,
out?
Laura, hey, listen, 3 sentences is the world. It can be the world.
Could be big money.
Yeah, all right.
This is something riding on my mind, so it's the only thing that came out today. The end of a 60-year dream, a lifetime of adventures and magic, jeopardized in a stack of code violations.
Okay.
Those are solid
Had to
statements.
say that. Yeah, that had to come out.
Thank you. Good. Next.
Are you still being
Let's give it a shot.
Someone complains. Oh.
Can you get in here? Yeah. You can.
Second time in my life.
Oh, wait a minute. We got 2 here.
I'm Steve from Grass Valley, and 2 weeks ago joined this group. One quick thing, the Tibetan monks will be in Grass Valley starting at the end of the month. They'll be for a month. They'll be back down in Auburn. They'll be here for 3 weeks, sit downtown, go see the monks from Tibet, learn about them, and listen to some of their talks and what they do. Wonderful people. They've been my lifelong friends for 20-some odd years now. Second time I've ever done this. The first was a couple years ago on open mic in Grass Valley. And I mostly write about women. In my interactions with them. I proofread my text one last time and hit send. I try not to hold my breath while I wait for her reply. Sometimes it's days and long nights of hopes and prayers. I try not to let the weight rule my thoughts and take over my mind. I wait for the beep that lets me know she's replied. Beep. The outcome will be elation or crushing pain. I always take the risks and a roll of the dice.
Nice. So basically, you said a whole lot in very short space there.
That's right.
And I think all of you were doing that here. And you can do that very well and keep tweaking at what you're doing if you want it different or whatever. But you got it all there
Yes.
in a short space. Good for you. That's a sign of a poet. Next.
Mine's longer, you may not.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, if you were able to write a long poem during this small,
I don't think it's a poem.
well, whatever it is, a
I'm
piece,
ready, I just didn't have it though.
piece of writing.
I'm so very glad to be back in the presence of this group. Each person is an encyclopedia of experience, of joy and sorrow, of likes and dislikes. All of us enjoy the written word and have things to teach each other. I came here today to decide if I wanted to rearrange my current schedule of talking with my son Eric so as to attend the Cameron Park Library presentation tomorrow.
Wow.
The answer is yes. At age 81, I choose to honor my own soul, spirit, and wishes, hoping this Eric will understand. Until recently, we had not spent much quality time together. Parallel lives, trains passing in the night, mother and son, who I think love each other deeply, yet have unsaid things that need to be spoken out loud in complete truth, with kindness and love and deep listening. If I change our 6 to 7 phone call on Thursdays, will he understand? Or will he think he's less important than my desire to write? It's only the 3rd Thursday. Shall I do this? Yes. The answer to me is yes. Will he survive? Yes. Will he be truthful about my wishes to do something else this Thursday between 6 and 7 o'clock? Actually, if he can't accept that, perhaps our communication is doomed anyway. 10 more minutes to go. Feels really great to spill these indecisions out on this paper. Let this journal hold them instead of my heart. Happy, hoping the best for him and me. I appreciate this chance to let loose like I journal in the mornings. Don't stop, don't lift the pen. Keep going, keep thinking, keep digging, keep feeling, keep the misery coming out the pen. Want to go tomorrow. We'll share a journal writing and a poem, the raw me, the caregiving experience. Yes, this is where those will be right to share and receive feedback. And close to my house. With Janice, maybe with Margie, maybe with potential friends and neighbors and acquaintances. Yes, yes, yes. Hope Eric will totally understand. I've journaled myself into this decision that feels right.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome. You put your heart there. You put your heart out there. Thank you. Well done. Yeah. And listen, 81 is a new life. I'm right behind you. I'm starting a new life this year. Okay. Me too. Next.
It was after hearing your prose, The Old Woman's Last Day, so get that in front of you for a second and it will help. I look at prose poetry and the first thing I want to do is reorganize all the words into ordered lines. See where the breaks are? There, in the midst of all the action. She believes, she loses, she cleans and finds, wrapping, sensing, remembering, and emptying. Dare I treat my own words so boldly? For to determine exactly where to start again seems impossible just for its many possibilities. If I stop after miracles, so take a look at the poem, at the prose, I am left with, and that what she loses will be given back. A perfect image in my mind hovers over the idea of reclaiming something lost. But try it again and stop after the word loses. See what happens with this. Will be given back. Gosh, I feel so much better. Hope, light, hands offering. And not to be rude, but what about throwing in an ellipse? Wouldn't that just tell us a different story? I feel even more hopeful looking at those three little dots because ... Life goes on with that visual aid, and I'm happier if the bad guys don't get the chance to eat the old woman. I am an old woman who doesn't want to be eaten.
That was excellent. You know, thank you very much. Now try the ellipsis.
It's on.
But,
I will try the ellipsis, as you say, but the other thing, you can actually change the story. You can write your whole different story about that woman. So that would be fun too. But thank you for that. And of course, they didn't eat the old woman; they ate a deer.
Right. Yeah, but the old woman was the deer.
Yeah.
The old woman was
Anybody else? Come on, come on. Don't be shy, don't be shy. Okay, back there. I had a feeling you were going to be reading something. Okay. One more? There'll be one more after this gentleman.
I think I'm going to sign up for this program.
Oh, good.
First time in here, my therapist told me that. She's like, you need to start writing again. And I'm like, you're probably right. So here I am. This cigarette burned lazily, the smoke lifted up on the still air. Nothing moved in this corner of the house, in this mausoleum of life. The stillness, the inanimate objects that filled this room seemed to take on a life of their own in this wing of the house. She was once a beauty filled with love, life fluids, and children. Now she feels an emptiness inside. Her wings are silent. As she lays back on the ancient leather sofa as she lays back on the ancient leather sofa, lighting her cigarette burn, she smells the carcinogenic smoke, the dustiness of the forgotten place. Those smells remind her of another time, longing for a past when she was someone else. She wants to be transported to someplace else.
Have you been writing for a while?
Yeah, but I also have not been writing for a while.
Okay, you have a nice style going.
Yeah. It's visionary.
Yeah.
Empathetic.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
What's your name?
Last
My
person.
name's Matthew.
I'm Nancy.
Well, wait a minute, we have another gentleman over here. Well, two more, let's do it, come on up.
I'm not a writer, I'm just a kind of a poet. Kind of a poet, yes. And this is my poem that I learned about being here today in this workshop. I am here to learn about different forms of writing. My mind is open to see what I can create. With or without the rhyming, I usually think is so great. Flash fiction or prose poetry are new ideas for me. I'm a rhyming poet and need to break out of the words that make it sound like writing with a rhythm. New ways of expressing can be found. As I sit here and think of what I should do, my hip hurts. Do I need surgery? Keep my mind on the writing until I am through. I am here to learn and here to accept there are many forms of poetry to find my voice and be original. I now have a choice. This is what I have learned.
Very good. Nice, very nice, thank you. Our last, but I mean, maybe next time with your group you can share more.
Can I go from here?
You can do it.
This is a short one. The carpet makes me dizzy. The intensity, the swirl, a garden gone mad. They waited months to replace the same water-damaged design. They call this the Rose Room.
And so we end with a surreal piece of writing.
Very real.
Thank all of you, and if any of you are interested in coming over to El Dorado County for the monthly poetry reading, we also do short story writers, as long as they don't read an excerpt from their short story or it's a short story. We do both there for the readings, the monthly readings there. If you're interested for me to put you on my email group list, come and give me your name and your email. And I have a sign-up sheet. So, thank you so much.
Thanks to Laura, and check out the few books she has back there, or